So a Biden-appointed judge just halted the enforcement of an assault weapon and magazine ban, finding that it's unconstitutional on the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Bruen. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think bans on so-called assault weapons are unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Established Titles. Have you ever been watching Game of Thrones and thought to yourself, man, I want to be a lord or lady? Well, with Established Titles, you can. Through Established Titles, you can get 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Scotland. And also you get a printable certificate with a crest recognizing you as a lord or lady. Here's actually the certificate that they sent me recognizing me as a lord, Lord Anthony Miranda, and they also have the plot here that they granted to me, which actually affirms that I am a Lord of Scotland. So I guess now you guys can call me Lord Armed Scholar of Scotland or something. The intention of these packs is to provide a fun novelty product for those of you who want to purchase something a little bit different for yourselves, for friends or family. And this also simultaneously preserves and protects the woodland areas in Scotland. Every lordship and ladyship title pack that you purchase contributes to the preservation and protection of woodland areas in Scotland. So not only is it a kind of cool gift to get someone, but it also has a good cause behind it. So I think it's something fun to get someone, especially with the holiday season coming up, kind of a fun stocking stuffer, a little bit different from something you would traditionally get someone. So if you're interested, you can use the link down below. And thank you again, Established Titles, for sponsoring this video. So like I said in the intro, a district court judge in Colorado just used the Supreme Court's recent ruling in Bruen to halt a Boulder County ordinance which banned the sale and purchase of so-called assault weapons and so-called large capacity ammunition feeding devices or large capacity magazines. The case we will be talking about in this video is Rocky Mountain Gun Owners v. Boulder County. In this case, a Biden-appointed judge granted a temporary restraining order, also known as a TRO, against the county and this ordinance that they had in force in effect. This TRO prevents the county from enforcing this ban on so-called assault weapons and so-called large capacity magazines because the county ban is unconstitutional under Bruen, and the plaintiffs are likely going to succeed on the merits of the case going forward, is what the judge found. Now, the facts of this case are as follows. On August 2nd, 2022, a Board of County Commissioners of Boulder County adopted Ordinance number 2022-5, which prohibits the sale and purchase of assault weapons and large capacity magazines as well, and there's also a trigger activators ban as well. The ordinance prohibits a person, corporation, or other entity in incorporated Boulder County from manufacturing, importing, purchasing, selling, or transferring any so-called assault weapon or so-called large capacity ammunition feeding device or magazine. On August 18th, 2022, individual plaintiffs led by Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and the National Association for Gun Rights, or NAGR, filed an amended complaint alleging that the ordinance violates the Second Amendment and also the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Specifically, this case challenges only the ordinance's regulations and ban on so-called assault weapons and large capacity magazines, so that's primarily what's focused on in this case. So that's some of the basics surrounding this case and what's being challenged. Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and NAGR challenged this county ordinance as unconstitutional, and they used the new Bruen decision by the Supreme Court as additional support for why this ordinance needs to be enjoined. Now, if you remember a while back, I did a video talking about a similar lawsuit that NAGR filed against the town of Superior in Colorado. That city did something similar to this county of Boulder, and in that case, the town of Superior also had the ordinance that the city had in effect enjoined by an Obama-appointed judge, and that Obama-appointed judge granted a temporary restraining order as well against the enforcement of that city rule. Well, here you have a Biden-appointed judge doing the same thing, which is a little bit surprising, but this shows how impactful the Bruen decision really is. Now, this aspect that I want to talk about is really important to understand what this case really means and where this case is going from here. A temporary restraining order is a protection mechanism that a party can seek from a court. The standard to be granted a TRO is similar to the standard for obtaining a preliminary injunction, with the primary difference being between the two is the duration of time that a TRO is in place in contrast to a preliminary injunction. A preliminary injunction remains in force throughout the entire duration of a case, while a TRO, in contrast, is traditionally entered into on an emergency basis and is only for a limited time. A TRO is often granted on an emergency, expedited basis, and it really is just a stopgap or a placeholder until the court can actually hold a preliminary injunction hearing and determine if they want to enjoin the force and effect of a law or rule for the entirety of a case. So think of a TRO as simply a placeholder to get to the preliminary injunction hearing where you can get something that's a little bit more permanent and longer. To obtain a TRO or other injunctive relief, like a preliminary injunction, a plaintiff must establish first a substantial likelihood of prevailing on the merits, 2, irreparable harm unless the injunction is issued, 3, that the threatened injury outweighs the harm that the preliminary injunction may cause to the opposing party, and 4, that the injunction, if issued, will not adversely affect the public's interest. So in this case, the plaintiff sought a TRO and also a preliminary injunction from the court to stop the county from enforcing their ban on so-called assault weapons and magazines. And the big news is that this Biden-appointed district court judge, Charlotte Sweeney, granted this TRO. The order of the court was that it granted the TRO on the ban on so-called assault weapons and magazines, and that the court is putting the ban on hold for 14 days until the hearing can actually take place, until that preliminary injunction hearing takes place. In granting the TRO, the court stated, plaintiffs allege that their Second and 14th Amendment rights will be violated by the ordinance, and therefore that alone shows irreparable harm sufficient for a TRO to be granted. She went on to state that plaintiffs are challenging the constitutionality of defendants' regulation of assault weapons and large capacity magazines. The Supreme Court has recently ruled that individuals have a constitutional right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside of the home, and New York's licensing regime for public carry licenses impermissibly interfered with that right. On this admittedly limited record, and with a liberal analysis of this factor, the court finds that plaintiffs established a substantial likelihood of success on the merits. Now, why is this important that a Biden-appointed judge just granted a TRO against an assault weapons ban and a magazine ban as well? Well, that is because the granting of the TRO using the Bruen standards shows that we are heading finally in the right direction. If a court is granting a TRO, it's likely that they're going to grant a preliminary injunction. And it also signals that the city or the county here is actually going to lose this case outright. Remember, one of these standards for the TRO or preliminary injunction to be granted is a likelihood of success on the merits of the case, which means that the court believes that Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, or NAGR, is likely going to win this case once it's fully resolved. They think that it leans more in their favor than in the state or the county's favor. Now, in the order, the court did defer the granting of the preliminary injunction until a hearing on the issue can take place, which is set for 14 days or longer. So this TRO will stay in place until there's actually a preliminary injunction hearing that takes place, and then the judge will decide if he or she, or actually it's a she, wants to grant that actual preliminary injunction. So right now, the court granted the first stopgap to bar the enforcement of this county ordinance, and in 14 days, the court will hold another hearing to see what will happen from there. Will they bar the enforcement of that ordinance, that county ordinance, for the entirety of this case? Now, another thing I want to note is that this granting of the TRO does not impact the entire state ban on so-called large capacity magazines. So keep that in mind. This county ordinance, this TRO on that county ordinance does not impact that. Now, another important thing that I want to note is that even if this district court judge grants the preliminary injunction in 14 days, the county can appeal that decision. This mechanism is often referred to as an interlocutory appeal. The best way to understand an interlocutory appeal is that it's an appeal on a kind of in-between order. So here it would be a appeal on that decision for granting the preliminary injunction. So it's kind of this in-between appeal, and it's not an appeal on the final determination of the case. So I understand that's a lot of procedural stuff, but it's really important to understand kind of where we're at in this case, the importance of that TRO, and where this case can go from here. But overall, this is a good win and a good sign of where these types of cases are now heading. So great job to Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and National Association for Gun Rights. If you guys are interested, I recommend you guys go check them out, especially if you're in Colorado. They do a ton of stuff in Colorado, and they are winning cases in Colorado. So definitely go support them. If we get any more information on this case, I will let you all know. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below, and I'll try to answer best of my ability. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Al Gore's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet and signal to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. Again, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys directly impact these videos, impacting this channel, helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So again, thank you so much for all of your support. And as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this is Built by Armed Scholars, and this nation will be maintained by Armed Scholars.